It is Madden and Benz, Unfiltered. Tim Benz and Mark Madden with you. Thanks for joining us here in the Trib Live, Facebook live stream, and Trib Sports on YouTube. We are going up until the top of the hour here. Mark will be on today to wrap up the Steelers-Browns game, and you've got plenty online here at Trib Live, even though it is a holiday. Thanks for joining us. We're brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the north side. Go to Mike's at the end of the Clemente Bridge, right across from PNC Park. They've got tons of craft beers available, steak and a stone, and you can watch Pittsburgh sports all year long at Mike's, including the Steelers when they come back after a weekend off, because they got a Thursday game this week against the Cincinnati Bengals. A little forewarn here. It's not my knee this time playing hurt. It's Mark's voice that's playing hurt. But Mark has showed up anyway. The Steelers showed up. The Browns didn't. And speaking of playing hurt, Mark, that's where the Bengals are. They don't have their quarterback. They don't have potentially their star pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson, who left yesterday's game with a back injury. Gesicki left with a pec injury. They're going to be 5-1, aren't they, with a long weekend coming up?
Yeah, no question. I hesitate to say they've clinched the division because look how last year went bad after they started 10-3. But the difference is the teams in the division have just all imploded. I don't see any of those teams regrouping to make a second half run and even remotely challenge the Steelers. So now for me, it's about playing for the number one seed in the conference.
Yeah, they've done what we called on them to do, or at least we should say if they beat the Bengals, certainly they've done so. You know, it was kind of the same thing last year where without Russ, they got off to the 4-2 start. They gave themselves enough of a cushion if there was a potential collapse that they could at least get in. That's exactly what happened on both fronts. This time, if they get to 5-1, with the division being so poor behind them, it could be enough of a cushion that they could win the division. And then it's an entirely different kettle of fish when you're talking about whether or not they can win a playoff game. Not only, Mark, because A, they'll be at home, B, the conference is weak. The league is weak. There are no really great teams out there right now.
Yeah, but with their luck, they'd win the AFC North, and somehow they'd have a playoff game against Kansas City, who maybe at that point have come on strong. They certainly looked good last night. So I think winning the division is far from a guarantee the Steelers are going to win a playoff game.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but I could very easily see them, for instance, with the way things are going, getting the second or third seed and then getting Kansas City as like the top or second wild card after like Buffalo gets the bye. And then the Chiefs have to come here because the Chargers win the division. That would be so typical for the Steelers to have it go that way.
Yeah, so nothing's guaranteed for the Steelers. I think they're going to beat Cincinnati. After that, some good games come up. We'll see how they do in those. I am far from sold. And I especially far from sold on this Neanderthal prehistoric offense. I love the defense. The defense is finally paying up to its payroll. But the offense, I don't think so. Not yet.
All right, Mark. So let's kind of look at the offense for a second because we stumbled on this point speaking on DVE this morning. They don't have a number 2 wide receiver. Calvin Austin is their best option when healthy. He's not healthy. The receivers, aside from DK Metcalf, had 1 combined catch yesterday. The calculus is changing. They're better. They're going to be drafting later. The quarterback pool is nowhere near as deep as everybody was suggesting it was a few months ago. As far as the compensation that they might get for their draft picks, that might be changing as well based on who's playing, who's not, and who might be going to the bench. All these things are coming into play where maybe it's time to stop thinking about trading up for the quarterback next year and maybe trade for a wide receiver this year before the deadline, because there might be some that could move.
It would depend on what you would give up, but I wouldn't do that. I don't think they're going to do it either. I think they're perfectly content with what they have at wide out. Maybe they don't draft a quarterback next year. Maybe we're right to speculate that the pool has diminished with Aller getting hurt and Manning being terrible. But I think they are content with what they have at wide out.
Oh, they can't. They can't. I know what you're saying. They might think that, but I don't know how they could think that based on the fact that they got 1 catch aside from DK. And even, the tight ends, they were good. They had a good collective game, but it took 4 guys to add up to what Cleveland did at tight end, and their tight ends weren't great by what they normally are, those 2.
Yeah, everything you say makes sense. They're just not going to do it.
What about the running backs? I know you were a big Gainwell guy going into this game, Mark. How did you feel they handled the carry distribution? I thought Warren ran really hard with the opportunities and the holes that he had.
Yeah, Warren didn't quite make a believer out of me, but he had a good game. Almost 5 yards per carry, 4.7, I think it was. I was glad to see Caleb Johnson get a few more carries because, like we talked about on the podcast, when Steeler fans talk about how they should have drafted Scatterbo, no, they should be playing
Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, he's the same type of back, better pedigree, got picked higher. Play him. And if Scatterbo were in Pittsburgh, he'd ride the bench.
Well, when you talked about the offense still needing to get better, where that was evident, and it's been kind of backward, it was backwards from what it has been. The Steelers throughout this year have maximized what little offense they've gotten because they've been very good in tight and in the red zone. In this game, whether it was at the red zone or just before it, that's when the drives bogged down. They started getting things going, and then they died at the top of the red zone and had to rely on Boswell field goals in the first half. You know, the one drive that really drove me nuts, and it's kind of strange again to say this because this feels inverted too, they got all the way down the field running. It was Johnson to start the drive, then it was Warren, then Gainwell had one good carry, and then they threw 3 straight times, and Rodgers was a little inaccurate yesterday. That was probably his least accurate game, and it bit them. And that's where I had a problem with the offense is at times it felt very scattered and inconsistent where it approached where they had been their best throughout the season.
Yeah, I can make it more basic than that. I hate their offense. I hate the 7 offensive linemen. I hate the short passing. I hate almost never taking a shot downfield. But, of course, we celebrate the rare occasions when Rodgers does, let alone when it works, like the ball to DK. I just don't think this offense beats good teams in big games, let alone playoff games. I don't think it comes from behind.
Well, I just hope that they kind of learn their lesson, something we talked about at great length, either on the podcast or here during Madden and Benz Unfiltered over the past couple of weeks, is how they coach away from what they feel they can't do. Well, you can't throw the ball to DK if he's in double coverage. You can only throw the ball if he's in single coverage. You can't run unless you have 7 offensive linemen. Well, maybe you have to. Maybe you can. And you can't just stay away from what you're afraid of failing at.
Well, yeah, but that's not new. They've lived in their fear since the day Tomlin started bragging about not living in their fears.
What'd you think of what Garrett said afterwards?
What'd he say?
Oh, you didn't hear what he said? He in his post-game press conference, he blamed his own offense and said, I'm getting sick of losing the same way every week. And then he also said on top of that, because he was asked, would you like to someday have a 2-score lead like the Steelers did so you can pin your ears back and go after the quarterback, which is an entirely leading question. But he took the bait and he said, yeah, it must be nice. Miles, you're the one that signed the huge contract to stay there, okay? Like, I don't want to hear it. You decided to stay. So why make such a big deal about what the offense isn't doing? You knew the offense wasn't going to do anything.
Yeah, except I think everything you said was true. It's just an unfortunate day to say it when you were very quiet, had 2 tackles, no sacks, no tackles for loss. He was invisible. And by the way, Trey Essex, who knows a thing or two about offensive line, really says Broderick Jones had a great game, and in particular against Garrett. So that's one real good thing for the Steelers.
Well, that might be the biggest development out of all this, honestly, is if they go up against Garrett, they go up against that defense, and they have a good day along the offensive line where the run game wasn't hamstrung. It wasn't great, but, especially given what Cleveland was trying to do, if it wasn't so limited that they couldn't survive, then that's good. And Rodgers didn't get sacked. So, maybe they start to trust the offensive line a little bit more, and Rodgers is allowed to stay in the pocket more often and try to hit some deep shots.
Well, yeah, they trust in the offensive line as long as there's 7 of them out there. I mean, Freiermuth and John, who are still doing very little, right?
Yeah, maybe Freiermuth gets involved this week because Freiermuth usually kills the Bengals, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like their offense. I feel like I'm being repetitive. I keep going back to the same crap, but that's how I feel, and that's what I see.
But you feel better about the defense, you said, though, right?
Yeah, I thought the defense played great, didn't you?
Yeah, I think this is what they tend to do. I always talk about this. They tend to play their best in October and then into November. And this is where the defense really flies around and starts making plays. And the offense tends to catch up about this time. That's why they peak in October and November. And then you get attrition then the body starts to ache. That especially this year where they don't have a bye and they also have their Thursday night game early. You're not going to have the long rest periods between games. I want to see if this defense is still flying around as crazy as it is in 4 weeks as opposed to what it is now. But yeah, it's moving, it's hitting people, and they're driving guys to the ground hard.
Yeah, no question. I thought, never mind driving guys to the ground hard. I think there was an element of dirty play, don't you? Deshaun Elliott had that kind of high hit, got a penalty. They had a bunch of borderline late hits, but that's okay with me. We hear all this stuff about the Steelers established themselves as a physical team. Well, they did that a little bit yesterday.
All right, so we want you to comment, Steelers fans. Let us know what you thought of yesterday's win against Cleveland. Let us know if you think they're going to advance beyond this game to 5-1 and be the first place team in the AFC North without much of a cushion. And what do you think about the next three? Mark, I'll fast forward really quickly to wrap up the Steelers' thoughts on this. They've got Green Bay, Indianapolis, and the Chargers. Do you feel good enough about them defensively that they can survive that group of teams, which is probably about as good as you're going to see in the NFL this year?
I don't know. I'm not sure I believe in Indy totally yet with Danny Dimes. I think LA, despite, a good coach and a good quarterback, is kind of laid down the marker for inconsistency.
Yes. Yeah.
I think they probably win. They won't win all three.
No. They'll lose at least one. I bet you I wouldn't be stunned if they walk away from that 1-2, and then we're having an entirely different conversation, but they're still ensconced in first place.
Yeah, that'd be 6-3 if they beat Cincinnati. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that's kind of where my head is, and we'll see where it is, but that'll be good enough. And I think that's what Rodgers has been, Mark. He's been what they've needed him to be. And strangely enough, like I said, I thought yesterday was his least accurate game. I think there was more points left on the table if the quarterback had made more throws, but he makes enough throws and he's doing what was asked of him. And most importantly, he's keeping himself upright if the offensive line isn't.
Yeah, but my argument with how Rodgers is being deployed is I think Mason Rudolph could be doing all this. Rodgers is very buttoned up. He's keeping the offense organized, very crisp in and out of the huddle. So, yeah, it's good they have him. I just expected him to be asked to do more and to do more.
What'd you think of Franklin's firing at Penn State?
I wouldn't have done it. I'm actually working on a column for the Trib about that. The guy won 13 games just last year, got to the college football playoff semifinal, won 10 the year before, won 11 the year before that, has really guided that program to the point where they don't even talk about Jerry Sandusky anymore. And he has one bad year, and this is his reward. I don't like it. I don't get it. But I do understand it, if that makes sense.
I think they did it because of the recruits that they're starting to lose, or at least decommitting. And I think they're trying to save those guys by letting the rumor mill spin around who might be the next coach and have that draw the kids back to just the campus and the program. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, the kids not knowing who the next coach is going to be will not draw them back.
Well, I think if the money's the same, roughly.
They've taken a situation and made it even more uncertain. I think that's why they did it. Like that kid from McKeesport decommitting, I don't think it helps.
I wonder if the certainty or the consistency of what was there at Penn State might have been something that was working against them, that you always knew what you were going to get. And this year it's actually regressed. Now, the great irony to this is one team I've seen Franklin linked to potentially is UCLA, which is what started the whole real snowball effect. Yeah, they lost to Oregon, but everybody was used to that. What if he winds up in UCLA? That would be irony on top of irony.
I'd like it.
Or I think I'd like it even better if he wound up in the ACC, replacing Belichick potentially at UNC or Va Tech, and then he has to mess with Narduzzi once a year potentially. I would love that.
Well, you know what really hurt Penn State was, and you got to give Narduzzi credit, even though I think he's a horrific coach. When Holstein started to falter, Narduzzi, despite the big NIL money being paid Holstein, had the guts to turn away from him and go to Heintschel. And I wonder if Aller, if he had played bad enough where Franklin should have considered that before Aller got hurt. I know that's tough to do with somebody as highly regarded as Aller and this grunt kid that's going to play now. I know he's a 4-star recruit, has a good arm, but they all do. But I wonder if Franklin had shown a little initiative instead of letting, the season just play out like it always going to with Aller, because I don't know what happened to Aller, but he's awful. Before
Mark,
he got hurt, awful.
Do you give Narduzzi credit then for going to Heintschel when he did, or should he have done it earlier? Because all I keep hearing from anybody who's on the Pitt side of the fence of this is, everybody saw this coming. He was great in camp. This shouldn't be a surprise. Well, if it shouldn't be a surprise, then he should have started the season, like against Duquesne on.
Yeah, but they were paying Holstein $1 million in NIL, Tim.
Okay, well, then they should have paid other people for that. You know what I mean? Like, if this kid was so clearly this much better, then they should have known what they had. Either allow the room for the surprise or, don't turn this into we all knew all along. If you knew all along, then you shouldn't have bothered paying Holstein all that much money. You should have distributed the wealth better then.
Yeah, but at least he did it. At least at some point he turned to Heintschel. Better late than never, as in what Franklin did with Aller. Well,
that's a decent point in the sense that better late than never can still work in the ACC, in that conference.
Oh, no question.
Especially with what they've got left, and we'll see about Miami. But I think they got Florida State at the right time, too. Florida State obviously peaked early, and they took advantage there. And maybe the kid's for real. I mean, I'll be interested to see how it goes. But everybody assumed that they had their answer to Pickett finally in Holstein, and it didn't work out that way. So let's see what this kid does after he goes through the ACC, if not for a half year, for a whole season, and where it is next year. But at least it brings back interest for that fan base, whatever it is, for the rest of the season to see him.
Tim, we jibber-jabbered about how great Holstein was a year ago.
Right.
And he went to crap. So, I mean, I hope Heintschel turns out to be the real thing, but I don't think that can be guaranteed. You said a moment ago about timing, how timing's everything, and you're right. I think if Penn State played Pitt this Saturday, Pitt would win. I think the further we get away from all these good things for Pitt and bad things for Penn State, like in 2 weeks, Penn State wins. In 3 weeks, Penn State wins and just keeps on winning. At some point, the natural order gets restored.
Mark, speaking about sort of believing in some of the young kids, what are you seeing from the Penguins, in particular, Kindle and Harrison Brunick, the defenseman? Are you buying into them for being guys that could be with the team for 82 games?
Well, I would keep Brunick just because I think he's looking good enough. And because I just don't think he can benefit and continue developing from a return to major junior. Kindle, I would probably send back if you maybe decide right now, because I think he needs to develop physically, add some size and strength. That said, I don't think he's being bullied at the NHL level. I just think if he stays here, there will be a cumulative effect on him. But if they kept him, I wouldn't be outraged either. I think he's done very well.
Your thoughts, big picture, on what Muse is trying to coach?
Well, I think he's trying to coach better than what he got Saturday.
Yeah.
A lot of the systematic stuff that worked so well in the first two games kind of lapsed, and they overpassed and got sloppy.
Well, some of that was even from the Sid line too, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sid was -3, and he made one just atomic bomb of a turnover that led to the Rangers shorthanded goal.
Well, I think that line, for as long as it stays healthy and together, they're going to run that risk for as much hockey IQ as the three of them have, because they're going to feel like they're going to have to do everything on their own because there's just not much behind him. Although I do like that Oak Tree line there with Brazzers and Gino Malkin and Mantha. That's a very unique look.
Yeah, well, I think it's worth a try. I don't think it's long-term. I think you eventually want to get a little more speed with Gino, but it's season's open. With the injuries they had, I liked it. I didn't like sending Koivunen down. I don't like Russ, Raquel, and Sid on the same line. I think they'll do everything by habits. I think when you have a new guy on there like Koivunen, you create. I think when you have the same three guys who play together a lot, you just do things by rote, and I don't think that's good.
All right, let's get to some comments here from everything we've talked about. I do want to hear from Penguins fans what you think of the first three games under Dan Muse, and I also want to get some feedback from Pitt and Penn State fans. I see some of that in the comments here, but I'd like a little bit more. Like, this is a huge – I haven't – for a while, Mark, I've always thought that Penn State fans, for as many of them as there are in the greater Pittsburgh area, they just don't talk a lot in our circuit. You know what I mean? Like, for what we do, they're usually, it seems like, content to have the news cycle be what it is. But this was different. Like ever since that UCLA game, maybe even back to the Oregon game, it started to feel different. And man, it crested quickly. So if we are just a little fragment of what was going on within the fan base, particularly closer to campus, I'm not surprised it went down the way that it did.
Well, it's like Martin Scorsese's mom said in the kitchen in Goodfellas, Tim, he's content to be a jerk.
The hoof, the paw. Let's go to Mark. He says, good morning, gentlemen. Appreciate the show. Look forward to watching it weekly. Need to worry about winning right now for the Steelers. He's saying this season fell in their lap. Last gasp in lieu of a sustained mediocre future and a rebuild. Well, you know what? With the way things are going with the quarterback situation, like I said, I'm throwing everything in play. And if Rodgers even wants to keep playing, I would consider one more year with him, but I don't think he would consider it at the number that he's playing for. Then it's going to become real money for him to play one more year next year.
He'll be back next year, barring injury and or disaster or both. I think that was always the intent, to see how it went, but to come back for 2 years, and they brought in whoever they draft as the quarterback in the first round next year. I think that's always been the intent. That said, I know the 7 offensive linemen and the way they do things with a lot of the quick releases is designed to protect Rodgers. But I've been citing frequently when Bruce Arians got fired because he didn't protect Ben enough, got Ben hit too much. I mean, Ben got hit less after Arians left, but then Ben did worse, and the Steelers never won as much. I would rather put the quarterback at risk and win more than just make sure he's okay to play, slightly above average.
Calvin says the Steelers are lucky their field maintenance team didn't injure the top scorer's leg. No Boz, no chance. Mark, I was down there doing a hit for Channel 4 after the game. And, normally after a game, you'll see these little orange flags that they put into the turf to say, like, repair here, repair here. It looked like the friggin' parkway near the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. There were so many little orange cones, like, around. Basically, they're saying replace the whole field. They might have to. And honestly, I don't know why the field was what it was. It hasn't been horrible conditions around here. And Pitt played last 8 days ago there, and they haven't had a lot of double up weekends. So I don't know what the problem is at this stage.
Tim, I got a better comparison. There was so much orange, it looked like the end where the Dutch fans sit at the World Cup.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, that's kind of what it looked like. It was crazy down there. And you can see the divots are like this. I mean, I know exactly what and why Rodgers was complaining the way he was after the game. Curtis wants to talk.
Seriously, how can that happen?
I don't know.
That happen, like you said, at a stadium where Pitt, nobody had played football for 8 weeks. How can that happen?
Rodgers was saying, hey, I know the stadium gets a lot of use, and he was sort of couching his criticism. Well, then I would be concerned about what it's going to look like in a couple weeks, when they do have double up games, or they still play some of the Whitfield games there, right? I mean, I know they play some of them at the Riverhound Stadium, but they still play some of them over at Heinz Field. So that's when it's really going to get torn up.
Tim, is it me or does Rodgers always sound like he's high?
And he always kind of sounds like he's looking for a fight, like he wants somebody to piss him off with a question, but they're winning too much for anybody to piss him off. So I'm sorry to disappoint him.
I don't know. I like the high one better. Like that thing about, he was like, yeah, I know it gets a lot of use. Yeah.
Yeah, he talks very quiet, if that's what you mean. Like I can never hear his answers when I'm interviewing him live. Like I'm straining to listen, and I can't be combative back to him because I don't know what he said. He practically whispers every answer he gives.
That's like the girl on the Jumbotron, the Penguin game, Susie Cole.
Yeah.
I can't understand a word she said. She's like a high-pitched dog whistle.
Well, is that because she's not talking loud enough, or they haven't figured out how to regulate her mic after the guy who was doing it before? That might be more the issue, is the soundboard monitoring, that it is Susie at this point.
All I know is squeaky voice. I'm like, remember that SNL skit based on the McLaughlin group, the Sinatra group?
No, I don't remember that one. Who was in that one?
Chris Rock played Luther Campbell. and every time he talked, Phil Hartman is not saying, not one word. Didn't understand one word.
Curtis says, Aller played poorly enough and definitely not clutch, but how much was that on the offense? They tried to run without a Trace McSorley type. Well, if you're talking about like the play in UCLA, yeah, I don't understand that. Like I had no clue what was going on there. Everything's been disappointing. He's been disappointing. Franklin was disappointing. The whole team was disappointing. It's just a completely lost year. And I think they're using that as a reason to hit the hard reboot because there were others that were getting sick of. This ties back to the same conversation we had a couple weeks ago, Mark. When you never win the huge game, you're not allowed to ever lose the game you should win every time. If you lose every 50-50 game, you can never lose the 100% game. And he did that twice this year, and that's why they are where they are right now.
Do you think it'd be a different conversation had they beat Oregon? Because they were ahead of Oregon in overtime.
Yeah, probably. Because then he at least would have had that good grace. Because, I think the Sharks were circling going into UCLA, and then he just chummed the water on himself by losing to the Bruins. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, and I think the big problem this year isn't James Franklin, even though, they came out flat and seemingly unprepared in a lot of games, not least the 3 they lost, obviously, not least the last 2, the big underdog games. But I think the Aller failure is the biggest factor. I think his disintegration from a first-round pick, maybe first pick overall, to a guy who's now, because of the injury, lucky he's going to get picked at all. How can that not be the number one factor?
Got a question here about the Ravens. Any reason to fear a potential Ravens comeback when Lamar returns? Well, they got a bye this week, and then they got the Bears at home, at Miami, at Minnesota, at Cleveland. So they do have 3 games in a row on the road, but 2 of them are certainly winnable. The Jets, the Bengals before the Steelers. So they've had a brutal schedule to go along with all these injuries to make it worse. I don't know if they ever come back to the point that they catch the Steelers, but hey, they were 8-5 going into their bye last year, and the Steelers were 10-3, and they passed them for the division. So yeah, I'll be concerned until I'm not, and I won't be until they're eliminated or the Steelers have clinched.
Yeah, but I see nothing going on with the Ravens to lead me to believe they can even when they're healthy, rally and I don't think they're going to get to 500, Tim.
Richard says, I wasn't a fan of the Pens sending down Koivu into Wilkes, but I get why they did it as he doesn't have to go through waivers. I would leave that technicality part of it aside. I just wanted to see him stay because he's an alleged core part of the future.
Yeah, I think that's a quick reaction to send a guy who's supposed to be a top 6 to the minors after 2 games. I would not have done it.
He might not have played great, but it was sort of the same thing that I was thinking with Brunick and with Kindle. Give him a chance to fail in a season where a lot of people were expecting the team to fail anyway. Maybe it's not even an overreaction, Mark, to him playing poorly for 3 games. It might be an overreaction to the Penguins playing well for 2. Like people thinking that this thing could be sustainable for the next 80, which it probably is not.
Boy, if Dan Muse thought that or Kyle Dubas thought that, I mean, they're the guys who have to think and see big picture accurately.
Vuk77 says, always enjoy the show. Can't help but feel like I'm waiting for the bottom to fall out. But, man, if they blow this lead, they need to clean house, trying to just enjoy. It'll get tighter. I think whether we go to one extreme or the other, like the Steelers bottoming out or the Ravens recouping everything, it's probably not going to go that far in either direction, but it will get tighter. I think the Steelers will have a tougher time in their next 3 games after the Cincinnati game. And like I just pointed out, the road gets easier for the Ravens and Lamar should be back. So it will make you sweat some. It's not like the Steelers at this point are going to go, 16-1. They're going to drop a couple for sure.
I think the Steelers will never sweat on their way to winning the division. No, I'm serious.
You don't think so? Not at all?
I don't think anybody in the AFC North can rally given what's happened so far and the injuries.
Now, Mark, is your voice and your illness going to prevent you from going to Liverpool? You're still making that happen anyway.
If my voice was going to do that, I wouldn't be doing this right now. I don't know. Honestly, I'm thinking if I have to take a day off to try to get myself back in tune to be better for that, I'm going to do that for sure.
Who are they playing, by the way, when you go over there?
The hated enemy, Manchester United.
Oh, so this is the big one then. It's not just a game, it's the Man U game.
Well, they're all big when you're trying to win the league for a second straight year, but yeah.
So Mark's on at 2 today. If his voice survives, we'll play back some of the podcast on his show as he usually does in the 5 o'clock hour. We're going to be back next week. Actually, we won't be back next week because Mark is flying. So there won't be a Madden and Benz Unfiltered. So make sure you check out whatever. We might go with Metzer. We might do a hockey version of Madden and Benz Unfiltered because it will be coming off an off day for the Steelers. On Friday, check out myself and Mike DeCourcy. We'll ostensibly do a post-game show for Steelers and Bengals. The Football Friday show will be wrapping up the Thursday
Tim, I
night
think
show.
you should do the Sinatra group.
I'll see if Chris Rock is available. I'm sure we can make it happen.
I forget who it was, but somebody played Sinead O'Connor.
Oh, Jane Curtin. Jane Curtin. Did she do it?
No, this is after that.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, it was like Phil Hartman would introduce like Sinead O'Connor, Sinbad O'Connor,
Jan Hooks.
Fester.
Jan Hooks?
Might have been, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what Chris is saying. I think he's right about that. I think it was Jan Hooks. Now, because I remember the picture of it now that you mentioned it, but I just don't remember the skit. But Jan Hooks, she did play Sinead a couple times when they were mocking her, tearing the Pope's picture in half on Saturday Night Live.
Right, fight the real enemy.
All right, Mark will fight his cold. I will be in for Mark on Friday after the game against the Bengals. And we will be on the air Friday morning right here on the live stream with myself and DeCourcy wrapping up Steelers-Bengals on Thursday night. This is Madden and Benz Unfiltered. Meet me at Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore.